Alright, I am back with another video, and today we're doing something a little bit different. It's been a little while since I last did a full party build, and this one is really special. In my Discord, I have a channel where people can make build requests, as I've mentioned a few times now, and somebody posted this image that you'll see on your screen now. Basically, the image states that, well, technically you could be historically accurate by having a gentleman thief from Victorian England, a samurai from Japan, an Old West gunslinger from, well, the Old West, and an elderly pirate all exist in the same time period. And of course, that immediately got the gears turning. But of course, I couldn't just make a party of these 4 archetypes and call it a day, because that would be a bit simple, and technically, in some shape or fashion, I've covered each of these things before in some way. I've made thief builds, I've made a samurai build, or I guess a ronin, as it was more accurately called. I've made a gunslinger with the true striker, and I've made a pirate, although it was a modded build. So I've decided to return to the concept with this video. Now, normally when I kind of do these full party builds, I'll have one build that's a bit more like my regular builds, and then the other 3 are a bit more simple. But honestly, each of these builds are so like in depth and have different things added into their character that if I was to go into all of them completely in depth like I normally would, this video would be probably 2 hours long. So I've decided to try and summarize it as best I can, go over the general themes, the leveling scheme, and all of that just kind of off the cusp. I might miss some things, but I should be alright, as, I don't know, I feel like I'm quite familiar with these characters and the way they're supposed to work together. Because the way I looked at this, right, I was like, okay, the 4 of these guys need to be a team. They need to have something bringing them together, a single cohesive theme that all of them share that can be used and that can be used to work as a team and actually have mechanics that benefit other party members rather than just themselves. And I've got it. So let's get into the backstory, because I'm actually going to read this. I'm quite proud of this. This group is called the Fortunate Four, and they got this name from, well, this. They were a group of just kind of regular humans from all different walks of life, either forced to leave their homelands or just their homes in general, or are on the run from something, be it the authorities or maybe other criminal organizations. Using their individual skill sets, they quickly learned to work effectively as a team, coming together maybe through the guise of some sort of job that they all did, and ended up becoming one of the most prolific criminal groups in Faerun. Now, I'll point out at this point that they did not have any sort of special abilities at this point. They were just 4 people with skills that worked for them. So basically, the thief, or the gentleman thief, guy on the left there, is basically the leader of the group. He is known for infiltration and is basically the kind of party face. He has a lot of quick wit, clever thinking, all of that good stuff, and he basically plans everything for the group, and his speciality is heist jobs. Because what the Fortunate Four do is they are a criminal group that will take on any job, but they are good people at the end of the day. Well, they will steal from people, they'll do mercenary work, they'll do this, they'll do that. I mean, hell, there's a pirate on the team. They don't really like to kill. The samurai will always attack with the blunt edge of his blade and such like that. So they're kind of like a group of gentleman thieves, but obviously we have the leader, who is a gentleman thief, and the rest who kind of follow his lead. So he basically uses his sharp wit and high-flying antics to plan and pull off daring heists. We then have the samurai, who was banished from his homeland after sullying his honor, so somehow breaking the samurai code. Now, obviously, this game is in Faerun. I don't exactly know if there are big like areas that are kind of like the equivalent to these sort of, to like Japan and all that sort of thing, but I'm sure there is, because there is a samurai class in game, so I'm sure someone will let me know. Probably should have done a bit more research, but anyway, he basically sullied his honor and kind of had to leave his homeland after being banished, but in doing so became a deadly mercenary. For a long time, when he was on his own, he took on various jobs as a mercenary, as a basically hired killer, and went around just killing everybody. But after meeting this group, he basically decided, okay, the bloodshed stops now, and so he attacks with the blunt edge of his blade. So this whole team is doing non-lethal damage, unless it's necessary to do the otherwise. And so the samurai is basically the muscle of the group, able to take down dangerous foes and keep the others safe using his extensive weapon training. But if he gets a little too into the thick of things, he might be prone to bouts of rage. Now, the gunslinger, he is a bounty hunter by trade, and he was famous for being able to track down some very, very elusive targets, until eventually he tracked down and arrested someone who had a powerful connection to the criminal underworld of his homeland, and basically now has a price on his head coming from criminals all over. So he is on the run from the criminal underworld, and as such is how he met the group. And finally, we now have the pirate. Now, he's a bit older. He was formerly the captain of his own ship a long time ago, and was a tyrant of the seas, plundering any merchant ship that crossed his path. But one day, he took on the wrong ship, and ended up being sunk for it. Like, he lost everything. He lost his ship, he lost his crew, he lost everything. But he himself miraculously survived, which ended up kind of becoming famous for his sheer luck. And he ended up stealing a new ship for his now smaller crew of about 4 people. His old age means he can't sword fight like he used to, but he is more than capable of supporting his allies through his sheer charisma and other things. His connections to the various ports all over different continents and countries and all this sort of thing, and his knowledge of seafaring is how the Fortunate Four were able to get around the continent. So they would do, like, you know, seafaring jobs, carrying shipments to and from, basically doing privateer work as well. So they have skill sets and aspects of all forms of life coming in to one solid group. But one day, though, as they sailed for Baldur's Gate on the Sword Coast of Faerun, they were caught in a dreadful storm. The storm was unnatural, fueled and emboldened by chaotic magic. None of them remember what happened, only that they all washed up on the shore along the Sword Coast with strange magical brands on their backs. And with these marks came unique magical abilities that they did not yet understand. And they didn't exactly have long to process this newfound power, as they were captured by the Mind Flayer Nautiloid soon after. So that's how the backstory goes. They're placed right at the start of the game with these new powers, which means even though they're quite experienced, they're only level 1. So they have a really interesting backstory that unites them all together. They now all have this theme of new magic powers that they don't quite understand. So each of these characters can use magic in some way. And now they have to basically do the plot of Baldur's Gate. So I think this whole group, the Fortunate Four, they're named for their sheer luck in seeming to survive any situation and becoming quite rich off of their exploits. I think they are a seriously fun group to work with, and I really, really hope you guys kind of enjoyed that little bit. But now let's get into the actual builds. So first up, we have the Gentleman Thief. Now, as you can see, his stats are a bit strange. Now, that's because his main focus is to be the party's leader, the de facto face of the party. He is kind of the, like I said, the kind of smart guy, so he's going to have a decent stats kind of across the board, Constitution being the only thing that's a little bit lower. But for those of you who know about kind of like Victorian Gentleman Thieves, is that they're the kind of guys who would steal your precious jewels and your wife too, and they'll do it the whole time with a no-kill rule, a bit like the Batman, and we'll do it with like kind of that sort of panache and suave kind of attitude that comes with like James Bond or something, for example, just minus the shooting and the killing. So you kind of get, so the whole point is that he's not really a frontline fighter, and he's not meant to be. So obviously we'd be starting off as a rogue, but I decided to actually use Arcane Trickster this time. I mean, yes, obviously Thief would make a ton of sense, and if you wanted to go for more of a, like, actual, like, fighter kind of variant, you could do, like, a left-handed spellsword variant with Thief, and then take the rest of the levels in Wizard and go from there. But I've made an Arcane Trickster Wizard because the way I kind of saw this character progressing is that they kind of start to awaken to their powers properly around level 3. They get the Mage Hand Legerdemain being kind of their signature ability, allowing them to kind of summon their spectral hand that's invisible so that it can scout anything. unless the enemy has sea invisibility, which they're not likely to do. It's very, very rare in this game, so you can scout any location, and if this guy wants to use like his smarts to make medicine checks to create a bunch of potions that the hand can then throw, so you can have like basically like an automated turret, you can go for stuff like that. It's a really, really fun strategy. If you've not played around with Arcane Trickster in this way, I highly recommend checking it out. And since both Arcane Trickster and Wizard scale with intelligence, we're able to kind of make that work for us. We're very single ability skill dependent. Any magic items are going to work without us needing to finagle our multi-classing around, and we're going to get a bunch of like illusion and enchantment spells. But the whole point of this build is to be a control and support build, taking themselves out of combat using their, you know, roguish maneuverability or things like Misty Step to basically put themselves into a safe area, using things like Mirror Image to give themselves more AC to be able to not get hit as much, and just fill the arena with powerful spell effects using concentration. Spells like Slow being a really powerful option for this build. I find that being able to slow a large group of enemies works really well for this team rather than just hasting one. Being able to use Dimension Door to ferry allies out of danger, and then being able to support with ranged spells like their cantrips such as Firebolt and Ray of Frost, but also things like Magic Missile. Being able to use Darkness to cover, to basically be able to kind of use the Darkness Devil Sight strategy, because some other members of the party are going to be able to see in magical darkness, so you can provide cover and support that way. But again, also being the face of the party, we have things like Disguise Self, Friends, all that sort of thing to kind of make it so we can kind of succeed a lot of skill checks, as well as being able to be very stealthy with things like greater invisibility, to be able to, and obviously having expertise in things like stealth and sleight of hand, in order to be able to basically be this kind of stealthy, roguish, planning heists, breaking into buildings and getting the whole team out of there safely. That's his modus operandi. But another reason I wanted to go Wizard was for Divination, because in my mind, think of it like a heist movie, right? Imagine these guys in a heist movie. They're going to break into, let's say, the bank in Baldur's Gate, and rather than having, like, you know, the character literally sit there and plan out the entire heist so everyone knows what they're going to do, we just start the heist. And this guy is so good at planning that everything falls into place the exact way they predict it, because they're a divination wizard who can see the future and alter outcomes for both themselves and their party members. Those of you who play tabletop D&D know that Divination Wizard is extremely powerful, and that's the same case here. So we're going to get our portent die, allowing us to alter the roles of enemies and allies to match our portent die that we get, and with the higher amount of portent die that we have, with the high amount of levels that we have in Wizard here, we're able to get those little fun side quests as well to get more portent die. It's so fun. You're literally the leader of the group, planning the heist. Everything falls into exactly how you planned it, and then you get to have your, you know, charismatic farewell as you ride off into the sunset with your group, with all the money you could ever need in hand. That is how you play the leader of this build. That is how you play the Gentleman Thief, with all of these amazing control spells. And again, we have access to scrolls as well, up to 5th level spells. As you can see here, we do have one 5th level spell slot, thanks to our Arcane Trickster spell slots, giving us a slight boost, so you can play around with a ton of different spells here. So my spells that I have chosen here, as you can see, are things like Enhanced Sleep, Long Strider, and Featherfall, which make perfect sense for this build. Misty Step, Mirror Image, as I said. Knock, to be able to open any lock, although it's not stealthy, people will come and investigate, so you do have to be a bit careful. This is mainly for if there is a lock that you absolutely cannot pick for some reason. Darkness, Glyph of Warding, to be able to set traps around the map. Blink, to be able to make it so you can very easily get out of danger in a pinch, although this will break your concentration. Counterspell, to protect your allies from powerful spells that you can see coming. Stuff like that, right? You have a ton of different options here. And again, you can learn more from scrolls, get some summoning spells, get this, get that. Make yourself the best support character you can be. Use Ice Knife to create surfaces. Use Fog Cloud for the same reason as Darkness in a way. Like, stuff like that. You just have a ton of options to really help out your party, get them out of danger, and again, keep yourself out of danger as well while providing a ton of support. This is kind of the playstyle of this build, and yes, that lower constitution does mean you are going to be in the danger zone quite a lot, but if you play this build right by teleporting away from danger, using things like Mirror Image to bump up your AC, you'll do really well. I went for a 4-8 split on the levels here, but you can play around with that ratio to your liking. My initial concept was actually a 5-7 split, it, to get evasion for better, like, to basically take half damage. So if you feel like that's pretty valuable, you absolutely can go with that. But feel free to play around with the levels in this. I love this build. I don't know why, but this is how an Arcane Trickster should feel to me. More spellcastery, but in a way that, like, amplifies that roguish feel. Again, greater invisibility and all that sort of thing. Just really make this build feel good to play. So I just love it. I think it's amazing. But let's get into the equipment now. Now, the equipment for this build is a bit loose. You can honestly put whatever you like on this build. It really doesn't matter as long as you're kind of covering for the lowest stats. The only thing I am going to say if you're playing with this stat spread is that the Gullers of Dexterity are mandatory. Otherwise, feel free to take points out of things you don't care about so much, like maybe Wisdom and Charisma if you don't care about being the face of the party that much. Put those into Dexterity and kind of go from there. But let's get into the actual equipment now. Starting off with our weapon, the Club of Hill Giant Strength. Now, I know it seems a bit counterintuitive to have such a weak weapon on a build like this, but hear me out. When I think of like a old Victorian thief, not even just a gentleman thief, I think of the blackjack, a blunt weapon that thieves would use to knock out civilians that catch them, or the authorities, or something like that. If you ever played one of the thief games, then you'd know about it. So I thought, this guy, again, being kind of a non-lethal, mainly stays out of combat combatant, I guess, he would use a club, a blackjack, and so the Club of Hill Giant Strength is going to set our strength to 19, meaning that we now have higher jump distance and all this sort of thing, and now, again, have decent stats across the board to be able to do all kinds of skill checks, again, being a really effective leader. But of course, we do still get sneak attack damage, so if you have to bonk a fucker on the head, as long as you have advantage, which you can, you're working in a team, you can get advantage in a ton of different ways, well, then yeah, you can bonk a fucker on the head if you need to. I think it works out really, really nicely for this build, but since this is a light weapon and you want something to give you a little bit of help in the offhand, here is the Cold Snap. The Cold Snap is kind of a magic dagger that when wielded in the offhand, you get the ability Chilling Counter. When a creature misses you with an attack, they must succeed a DC 13 con save or be chilled for 2 turns, and you get a +1 to your armor class as well. It's mainly here for the armor class benefit, but being able to inflict chilled, which makes enemies vulnerable to cold damage, meaning you can hit them with something like Ice Knife and deal a ton of damage that way, that absolutely works. So yeah, I would say once you get to Act 3, you can just kind of pick this up and put it in your offhand, but you don't need it. The only thing you need is the Club of Hill Giant Strength, just to round out your stats and have that melee weapon for when that arises. But again, this guy mainly stays out of combat and uses control spells, so if you find yourself in the middle of melee combat, you might want someone to come and save you, perhaps the samurai. But again, the rest of the equipment on this build actually doesn't matter that much. You can just kind of use whatever, because again, since we're not really focused on being in the forefront of combat, I mean, you can use whatever you like. I just kind of wanted to go for some things that kind of fit the vibe of what I'm going for here, but if you wanted to use camp clothing or modded transmog or something to just slap a bunch of spell save DC equipment on this build to make it so all your spells are more likely to have effects, then you absolutely can. Up to you. But we're going to start off. The headpiece is the Mask of Soul Perception, giving us a +2 bonus to attack rolls, initiative rolls, and perception checks. I've mixed this with the Alert feat. That's another thing that all of these builds have. They each have a feat that I've built around. This being Alert. I want this guy to be able to basically be the first person to move in every combat, because I want him to be able to immediately get into position, getting himself out of danger, and start setting up those powerful control spells, like Slow, for example. And I think Alert plus the Mask of Soul Perception is the best way to do this, giving us a +7 to initiative, basically guaranteeing that we're always the first to go, which is brilliant. It's perfect for a strategy like this, and it also makes us so we can't be surprised. So even if we end up in a surprise encounter, it doesn't matter, this guy is still sharp enough and quick enough to react. And that is what I love. That is perfect for this build, getting quickly set up so that the rest of your team can start to do their work. A proper leader. Next up is the Cloak of Displacement, basically just making us even harder to hit, giving us disadvantage on attack rolls until we take damage. Pretty good. Nothing that... It's a decent cloak, and it fills the slot quite nicely. Next up is the armor. This is pure fashion. It is the padded armor +2, making us take less damage from bludgeoning, to less damage even, and it comes with a 13 armor class. It's not good. Well, but it just looks so perfect for this build. But if you want a proper Act 3 option, we have the Elegant Studded Leather, coloured in black and red. So no, this is not the Ball List set, this is the Elegant Studded Leather with a die, giving us a +2 bonus to our initiative rolls, even more so, meaning we're basically guaranteed to go first all the time now. Advantage on stealth checks, perfect. And shield once per short rest. So honestly, if you're going for something other than, I mean, this still looks good. I mean, pure fashion wise, I like the padded armor more, but this just fits the build so perfectly that I couldn't not recommend it, giving us really high AC as well. So, you know, I would definitely say this is worth going for. And I also forgot to mention that we also have the Covert Cow here as an early game head option, basically just giving you a higher chance to crit while you're obscured, which you can basically always be, so there you go. Gloves of Dexterity, I've already gone over it, sets our Dex to 18, so you're going to be dumping Dex with this build. Until you get these gloves, maybe run with like a 16 Dex, dumping the other stats, get these gloves, and then go for the stat spread I kind of have here. So, and the way this build works with ability score improvements is it's 3 ability scores, 2 into intelligence, for 2 of your ability score improvements go all the way into intelligence, bringing it up from a 16 to a 20, and the alert feat as another one too. And finally, the Boots of Arcane Bolstering. Each time you dash, which you can do as a bonus action as a rogue, you gain Arcane Charge, which makes it so, and this is going to be a bit confusing, while threatened, the affected entity has a +2 bonus to damage with spells. This is wrong. How it actually works is you have a +2 to damage, +2 to damage with spells against threatened enemies, so enemies that have, say, an ally of yours attacking them already. Then, so basically, it's kind of like getting a weird, weaker version of sneak attack on your spells, because it's like, oh, there's an ally next to an enemy, I can now hit them for extra damage. Stuff like that. It kind of just fit the build quite nicely, so I wanted to throw it in here, and I think it works really, really well, just thematically. Next up is the Necklace of Elemental Augmentation, meaning that any of our elemental cantrips like Fireball or Ray of Frost or Shocking Grasp, even if we do end up being in melee, will deal extra damage equal to our spellcasting modifier. We have a maxed out instant, so that's basically Eldritch Blast levels of power. Next up is the Ring of Free Action. You ignore the effects of difficult terrain and cannot be paralyzed or restrained. You're so dexterous and high flying that nothing can stop you, which I felt was quite nice. And finally, the Ring of Protection to give us a +1 to armor class and saving throws. Now, the way you can get this in game is actually by basically performing a heist. If you follow the questline of Act 1 to its completion and then steal the Idol of Sylvanas after the fact, you can do it without being seen, meaning nobody gets aggroed, and you can get this ring without any trouble. So honestly, pulling off the perfect heist to get this ring, which is a nice buff to our overall defenses, is great. So I highly recommend picking this up. So yeah, general overview of the character, just for anyone who wasn't clear. Alert and 2 ability score improvements into int, this sort of equipment, and your general playstyle is going to be support, control, stay out of trouble. Overall, love it. I love this build. It has its flaws, don't get me wrong. If the enemies do decide to rush down this guy, he's not going to last long. But as long as you play your cards right, stay out of trouble, and even make use of your Mage Hand, Ledger Domain to throw shit at the enemy, then you're gonna have a good time. Trust me, this is so fun. And look, you can pilot this little thing. Whee! Off he goes. And yeah, remember, this thing can throw things. So if we go, wah, throw. So yeah, again, if you create grenades or like find grenades around and stuff like that, this thing can throw them because it does not take an action on your turn to drop things. So during combat, you can just drop a million things out of your inventory and just have the hand throw them on their turn with no cost to the thief. It's brilliant. I love this playstyle. Arcane Trickster, I think, is genuinely underrated by the community, and I highly recommend you give it a try. Next up on our list is the Samurai. And this is gonna be a bit weird, okay? Because I've made some decisions, right? That you're gonna question, but hear me out on this. We are a level 6 Battle Master Fighter and a level 6 Wild Magic Barbarian. This guy definitely has the least magical power out of the whole group, basically not having conscious control over it, but is able to use his magic whenever he goes into a battle rage, basically. Which may also hint to the reason why he sullied his samurai honor. But anyways, with this, we are going to be able to get wild magic surges. I'll have the table on screen now for you, so you can see kind of what effects might come out of this. Pretty much all of these are helpful to us in some way, and is a unique kind of way of using magic with a fighting build that I really, really enjoy. But the wild magic sorcerer also comes with some stuff to help the team. Bolstering Magic Boon. You or an ally can receive a 1d4 bonus to attack rolls and ability checks. Basically, once per long rest, you can slap Bless on yourself or an ally. Also, you gain Bolstering Magic, able to restore the level 2 and level 1 spell slots of your party members. So there's that have spell slots. So there's a team aspect to this character as well, which is great. In addition to the Battlemaster maneuvers like Commander Strike, Maneuvering Attack, Goading Attack, and Distracting Strike, allowing you to basically open up opportunities for your party members to gain extra attacks, move around the battlefield, and make it so it's harder for your enemies to hit them. And there's just so much cool stuff that feels like you're actually working as part of a team with this particular build of a fighter barbarian that I just absolutely love. Now, I'm going to point out the two massive elephants in the room with this build. Firstly, yes, we're using the katana, an Act 3 weapon that is only a +1 longsword with no additional benefits. But it's a samurai, what else am I going to do? We can buff it up with the Drakethroat Glaive, which is a weapon that we can use up until Act 3 when we get the katana, to give this a +1 to the attack and damage rolls, as well as getting the small elemental buff on it as well, so turning it into a +2 weapon with a bit of extra elemental damage overall, which is more than enough to get through the game. This build also uses Great Weapon Master as well to be able to get a ton more damage, and because we have so many different ways of kind of mitigating the penalty the Great Weapon Master brings, thanks to our allies, we have, giving us advantage in various different ways. We're not going to have any troubles with our melee capability. We're going to be one of the strongest damage dealers on the team. Now, overall, why is my strength only at 19? Oh, I forgot to... Whoops, I forgot to give this guy Ethel's Boon. But yes, you are using Ethel's Boon on this build as well, which does suck, I know, but it was the best way that I could eke out all of the stats that I wanted while still getting the feat. So you are going to use Ethel's Boon to boost your strength to a 20 to get the most possible power overall. Again, if you kind of look at the damage here, we go over to this. Yeah, you can see we get a 1d10 plus 15 damage, and we can attack a bunch of times in a turn as well, and we can also gain extra damage through things like our maneuvers, dealing that extra damage as well. So you're not going to be hard up for damage. If you see my Wandering Swordmaster build or my Oni build, it's kind of a similar concept. But the other big elephant in the room is the armor choice. Now, the Splint Armor +2 is the closest to a proper samurai armor that I can find in the game, and it looks amazing. I love the color scheme on it, but there's a problem. It's heavy armor, meaning that we now have rage impeded, so whenever we rage, we won't get extra damage, we won't get the resistances, and we don't get the strength check and saving throw advantage either. Which sucks, but if you wanted to go with the full fashion, which I personally do, it's not the end of the world. We still get the wild magic surges, we still get all the other barbarian abilities that I've showcased, and we still get access to our battle maneuvers. We just don't get the basic kind of rage stuff, which, yes, does suck. If you don't care about the look of the samurai, go for the Armour of Agility, the 1T scale mail. Any powerful medium armor that you can find will work for this build perfectly and still give you the full benefits of rage, and will obviously be more powerful overall, but if you want to go for that pure samurai look, yes, you will lose out on a couple of the basic things, but you're still going to be getting everything else, including the wild magic surges, which is what I'm mainly here for. And you also get all the other passive barbarian features as well, like Danger Sense, Reckless Attack, which is going to be our main way of offsetting Great Weapon Master, which I completely forgot about. Yeah, none of that is lost from Rage Impeded. You're only losing those extra little basic things. The big thing is the resistances, the physical damage. You are going to be losing those, which is going to make you less tanky overall. But again, you can mitigate that if you just wear medium armor, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're a full-blown barbarian tank with the unarmored movement as well. So it's entirely up to you how you want to play this. Again, there's plenty of strong medium armor options to cover that up. But with that out of the way, let's get into the rest of the build. I've gone for a ranged weapon because, again, samurai were known for using longbows as well as katanas and, things like naginata as well, which is kind of what the Drakethroat Glaive is meant to be. So you get the Titan String Bow, which is going to deal additional damage equal to our strength modifier, which is great. Absolutely perfect for us. Will work, no problem at all. It's only a +1 bow at the end of the day, but people know that this is one of the strongest bows in the game anyway, so it really doesn't matter. You will get a lot out of this. Next up is our headpiece, the Bone Spike Helmet. Whenever we rage, hostile creatures within a 3-meter radius must succeed a wisdom save or take psychic damage. So we get that when we rage as well. We get a +2 to Intimidation, which is nice, and Menacing Attack. melee, meaning that now we have one of our kind of Battlemaster maneuvers for free without spending superiority die, still getting that extra damage as well as being able to frighten enemies. So couldn't not include it on this build, it's too perfect. We've already gone over the splint armor, but it does give you a little bit of resistance to piercing damage. You gain a +1 bonus to strength, saving throws, and checks, so it does actually patch up a little bit of the loss of the Barbarian rage, just a little bit, but not quite all of it. Now next up for the gloves, you have a few choices. We have the Gauntlets of the War Master here. Targets have disadvantage on saving throws against your maneuver and weapon actions, and you also gain a +1 to attack rolls, basically making all of our Battlemaster maneuvers way more likely to have their full effects. But you could also go for the Legacy of the Masters, giving you a +2 bonus to attack and damage rolls with weapons and a +1 to your strength saving throws. Either one of these will work really nicely. If you just want more damage and accuracy, go for these. If you want your Battlemaster maneuvers to gain their secondary effects more often, go for these. But of course these are both Act 3 options, so you can also go for the Helm Gloom Gloves, which is just going to give you a flat 1d4 fire damage to your weapon attacks. It's entirely up to you. And I did forget to mention, again, if you want an earlier game headpiece than the Bone Spike Helmet, you can go for the Circlet of Hunting, giving you a 1d4 bonus to attack rolls against creatures marked by Hunter's Mark, True Strike, Fairy Fire, and Guiding Bolt. Now, while we don't have things like any of those on this build, our teammates do. We have a teammate with Fairy Fire, we have a teammate with True Strike, we have a teammate with Hunter's Mark, so anytime an enemy is marked by those, you basically also get that additional buff to hit, bonus to hit from that as well. Again, another teamwork strategy, which I love. Next up are the Boots, which are the Boots of Persistence. You gain freedom of movement and long strider. Pretty simple, more movement speed, and you're basically immune to stun and cannot be paralyzed or restrained while wearing these. Perfect. Again, an Act 3 option though, so the evasive shoes giving you a +1 to your armor class is also a decent option that you can pick up in Act 2. So yeah, overall that is the build. Again, it comes with that heavy armor caveat, but if you just wear a piece of medium armor, again, the 1T scale mail being a good Act 2 option, then you'll be fine. There'll be nothing to worry about there, but I mean, look at this, man. We can't not wear this armor, and since we get all of the things that I wanted from this build anyway, despite wearing heavy armor, I don't think it's that big a deal. You're still going to be a really hard-hitting guy who can tank for the party and do all that sort of thing, so I'm not worried about it, but if you are, I've given you the options. Oh, the amulet, the accessories. It's really hard to do these types of videos where it's not in my usual style. My thoughts go all over the place. We have the Unflinching Protector Amulet. When a nearby ally is targeted by an attack of any kind, you can use a reaction to make that attack automatically miss once per short rest. Again, another teamwork skill that is perfect for this build. The Killer's Sweetheart. Whenever we kill a creature, your next attack roll will be a critical hit. Once spent, this effect refreshes after a long rest. Now, I know I said this team has kind of a no-kill rule, but let's be honest, spells are always lethal. There's going to be some deaths. This guy goes into a battle rage, that non-lethal damage is coming off. He will kill people. He will kill people, and he won't be happy about it, but hey, your next attack is guaranteed to be a critical hit. Well, it's actually a reaction that you can bank and then spend whenever you like, so which will guarantee a hit with Great Weapon Master, and will also guarantee that you can get the bonus action weapon attack off from Great Weapon Master as well, so I had to include it in this build. I know it kind of goes against the backstory of the character, but fuck it, make up your own. I did. That's how this video exists. And finally, the Ring of Blink, another kind of wild magic, another wild magic spell that I kind of wanted to pick up. If you see my wild magic sorcerer barbarian build, then you'll know that Blink actually works in rage. As long as you cast Blink first, you can then rage and still get its effects because it's not a concentration spell. So you can get Blink once per long rest with this, and it will basically just make you even harder to hit, allowing you to be even more tanky. Because a kind of an interesting strategy you can use here is if you're raging with Blink, you can use things like goading attack. Where is it? Goading attack to basically force enemies to try and attack you, or since they can't attack you because you're in Blink, they'll have disadvantage on attack rolls against all of your party members. So you can basically make it near impossible for your enemies to attack your allies with this kind of strategy. So I think it's a really nice mix of things. So yeah, overall, a great team player and a true warrior at the end of the day. I really like this build. I like all of these builds. This is some of the most fun I've had in a long time. Next up is the Gunslinger. Now, I've done Gunslinger builds before, and this one is fairly simple at the end of the day. Let me just fix my equipment here. Perfect. This is a pure level 12 Gloomstalker Ranger. You may be thinking, Why Gloomstalker? Well, with this build kind of having this kind of like heist crew element to it, the idea of turning an Old West gunslinger into like a stealthy spellcaster with all sorts of special ways to fire their gun, or in our case a crossbow, felt really interesting to me. I knew I wanted this character to be a ranger, and since I've kind of gone for like a lot of ability score improvements and a feat with this as well, being the obvious sharpshooter, we now have Great Weapon Master and sharpshooter, I thought it made sense to just go all the way to level 12 here. Now, any ranger subclass will work. Hunter will get you things like Hordebreaker or Colossus Slayer, the volley attack, all that sort of thing. Beastmaster would get you an animal companion, which for like a gunslinger cowboy type character makes sense. But Gloomstalker for this specific group dynamic, again, this like Heart of Gold thief group, criminal organization, worldwide traveler, what have you, Gloomstalker just felt like it made sense, giving us all the stuff that we want from Ranger, such as Hail of Thorns, Ensnaring Strike, Hunter's Mark, Speak with Animals, Find Familiar, because every good squad, like criminal squad, needs a mascot. I don't know. Animal companions, get Scratch in this playthrough, absolutely. But also gaining the ability to hide as a bonus action, turn yourself invisible in multiple different ways, disguise self as well on this build, Conjure Barrage, Lightning Arrow, True Strike, Misty Step. All of this stuff just fit the vibe of the party perfectly, and I knew I wanted to go with it. So you're going to be getting, and now this build is a little bit strange with the stats as well, you're going to want to get a 17 in Wisdom, a 16 in Dexterity, and a 14 in Constitution, putting your dump points wherever. I put them in Charisma, and you're going to be buffing up your Wisdom to 18 with Khalid's Gift, giving you a +1 in Act 3, but so you'll have effectively like a 16 in Wisdom for a long time, until you get to Act 3, get this and bump it up to an 18 that way. And you'll be putting 2 ability score improvements into Dexterity, and then grabbing Sharpshooter with 1 of your feats, allowing you to do a ton of extra damage with your attacks, as you can see here. So this is probably going to be one of probably the more powerful damage dealers here, especially since you can augment your Sharpshooter attacks with things like Ensnaring Strike to immobilize enemies. You can get Hail of Thorns out here, doing an absolute massive amount of damage in like an AoE. Conjure Barrage, doing something a bit similar. Lightning Arrow, getting a bunch of elemental damage off as like a charged shot. And since we have dual wielding here, you can do kind of the True Striker combo, just to a lesser degree, because we don't have 2-weapon fighting, unless you decide to use the Gloves of Balanced Hands to get it. And also we get things like Magic Missile, Scorching Ray, like we're doing the typical dual wielding crossbow thing here. And again, kind of going for that gunslinger vibe, we have all the necessary equipment to do so, like the Marksmanship Hat, giving us a +1 bonus to ranged attack rolls, and also being a cowboy hat, so I kind of had to use it. Like, we get everything we want with this build. We get stealth for the heist aspect, we get powerful ways to use our guns in unique fashions, we get Hunter's Mark to be able to mark our prey. Again, this guy was a bounty hunter, this is kind of the Ranger's deal. We just get everything here that I absolutely love thematically, and it's a fairly simple build, just being 12 levels in Gloomstalker Ranger, getting everything that offers us. We're going to get things like, I believe it's, yes, Stalker's Flurry, meaning that whenever we miss a weapon attack, we can just make another one for free, meaning that we're kind of offsetting the penalty from Sharpshooter a bit that way as well. But of course we also get things like the archery fighting style as well, to be able to just offset that anyway. We also get things like Wasteland Wanderer, fire resistance and cold resistance, so we're going to be a bit tanky there as well. Overall, we just get a ton of stuff from this build, which really, really works for us, including Dread Ambusher, which I love for this build. So both this guy and the Gentleman Thief are going to be really high in the initiative order, pretty much always going first, and I kind of flavor this for, and this is one of the main reasons I wanted Gloomstalker, as since he's an Old West gunslinger, I can imagine combat starting off as him literally going for like a high noon kind of like duel, and as the combat starts, he's the first to pull out his gun and just fire. Like a gunslinger. Dread Ambusher just works so perfectly for this build thematically, and was the main driving force between me picking Gloomstalker for this build, but everything else just works perfect for what this team is going for as well. We just get so much. We even get Iron Mind, which gives us proficiency in Wisdom and Intelligence saving throws, and that kind of reminded me of Clint Eastwood, just like nothing phases you, you just like are just a badass the whole time. I love it. I love it so much. We also get things like Mage Breaker and all that sort of thing. Ranger Knights, you have the option to use heavy armor if you want. Oh, it's just so good. But anyway, let's get in. We also get Superior Dark Vision too, so even though we're a human, we get Dark Vision. It's just I love it. I love Gloomstalker as a gunslinger. I've never ever considered that flavouring before, but it's just perfect. Anyways, let's get into the actual build now. Main weapons that we're going to be using are the Hellfire Hand Crossbow and the Near Misser, the typical dual-wielding crossbow combo. Again, we don't have two-weapon fighting without the Gloves of Balanced Hands, so our offhand attacks are going to be a little bit weaker, but since we can use our bonus action in various different ways with things like Hail of Thorns anyway, it's not going to matter too much. This is just here if you feel like you need the option. Also, giving us Magic Missile anyway is just kind of nice to have. And also the Hellfire Hand Crossbow, because we can be hiding or invisible really easy with this build, we're able to inflict burning quite a lot, so I just felt like it worked really nicely with this build. As I've already said, we've got the Marksmanship hat. For our armour, I've gone with the Sharpened Snare Cuirass, adding our full dexterity modifier to our armor class, and we don't have disadvantage on stealth checks, which is great because normally medium armor would do that, and creatures that will have disadvantage on saving throws against our attacks and spells that inflict restrained, so Ensnaring Strike. Also, fun fact, Ensnaring Strike counts as an attack for triggering extra attack, so you can basically always use this, being able to restrain enemies as you see fit, as long as you maintain concentration. Overall, a really fun thing, and again, makes sense for a bounty hunter type character. Next up, I wasn't too sure on the gloves for this build. I feel like you can pretty much slap anything that's going to give you more damage on this build, but I decided to just show off the gloves of archery here, just giving your ranged weapon attacks an additional flat 2 damage, no ifs, ands, or buts. There's probably better options out there, but this is just a solid Act 1 option you can grab, but maybe you can grab something like the Helldust gloves in Act 3 to just get that flat fire damage on them all, like D6 fire, something like that, but I felt like this was just a decent option that works for this build, since you might want to use that equipment on other characters in the team. But of course, if you want to go for that more dual-wieldy aspect, then the Gloves of the Balanced Hands will do that for you just nicely, so feel free to swap them interchangeably. And finally, the Boots of Speed, allowing us to dash as a bonus action. And apparently, Click Heels has a secondary effect that I wasn't privy to, and it gives disadvantage on opportunity attacks against us. I did not know it did this, I just never ever checked. So you're going to be able to maneuver around the battlefield really easily. One of the important aspects of ranged builds is being able to move around to stay out of danger in order to be able to attack from afar, so being able to dash using your bonus action and make opportunity attacks less likely to hit you made too much sense for this build, so I've included them here. And again, all of this stuff is obtained in Act 1 or 2, so this build comes online really early. As for our accessories, we have Khalid's Gift, like I said, giving us that +1 to our wisdom to round it out. It also gives us a usage of Aid just for ourselves, so we can have a little bit of extra HP. The Caustic Band is just going to add a flat 2 acid damage to all of our attacks, so a +4 overall, well technically +14 with Sharpshooter, so that's quite nice. And finally the Eversight Ring, meaning that we cannot be blinded, so if our teammates, say, wanted to try casting Fog Cloud or Darkness or something on us, we can then basically be a whirlwind of bullets coming out of a cloud that cannot be attacked into. And finally, since we are mainly a ranged weapon user, our melee slots don't matter as much, so we can just slap whatever we like in here. I've gone for the Knife of the Undermounting King to reduce our critical hit threshold, meaning we now roll critical hits on a 19 or higher, as well as re-rolling lower damage die, as well as just picking any random shield. This one just gives us a +1 to stealth, but you can put any shield on this slot and reap the benefits, while still looking awesome. I love this build. I feel like again, Gloomstalker as a gunslinger, never ever thought of it, but the combination, especially for this team, just works so well, combining that stealthy heist aspect with the Old West gunslinger, uniting the themes of the party so well. And finally, we have the Pirate, or the Pirate Captain, or whatever you want to call him. Now, as you probably could have predicted, this guy is the bard of the group. Now again, in his older age, he's less prone to direct sword fighting and is more than happy to just kind of support the group. Again, he can also serve as a face of the party with his high charisma, but he's less of a leader and more of a womanizer, I guess. Definitely kind of that Jack Sparrow type if he was in his twilight years. So we've gone mostly for Bard here, 10 levels in Bard to be able to grab things like, and 10 levels in Valor Bard, I shall say. Mainly because I wanted this build to be a support build, we've gone for Combat Inspiration here, and at level 10, our Bardic Inspiration buff becomes a D10, and with Combat Inspiration, our allies with this inspiration can add 1d10 to their next attack roll, ability check, saving throw, weapon damage, or armor class, meaning that we can throw around massive buffs for the party 6 times per short rest, meaning that we can seriously support the party here, as well as being able to use things like Cure Wounds, Healing Word, Mass Cure Wounds, Glyph of Warding, Greater Invisibility, Freedom of Movement, Hold Monster, Hold Person, Vicious Mockery. We have so many powerful support options here to keep the party going. Song of Rest even as well, Disguise Self to fit in with that part of the group. Like, everything here works so perfectly, Counter Charm even, to be able to set up your party's theme song as you go into battle. Like, there's so many different things here that can work perfectly for supporting the team and keeping yourself alive to do so. I've also thrown in here 2 levels of Archfey Warlock. This is going to give us invocations, because with this build, we've replaced a flintlock pistol that a pirate would typically have with Eldritch Blast, getting Agonizing Blast with that, dealing a bunch of damage with Eldritch Blast, as well as being able to pick up Fey Presence to charm or frighten nearby foes with the Feywild's disturbing magics. We're probably going to be using charm if we're sticking with the theme of this build, but also that's also going to get us Devil's Sight as well, so we are now able to basically work with darkness being given to us by the thief as well. So we just get a ton of stuff with this build to support and help the party. Healing, buffing, all of this good stuff. You can even use magical secrets to pick up things like haste as well if you really wanted to go for that, but I kind of wanted to focus on other things. And you can also even pick up things like Armour of Agathis as well to make yourself more tanky. It's just so much to this that you can work around with and play with. It's great. There's a ton of versatility to this build, and you have solid damage options all around through either Vicious Mockery or Eldritch Blast, or your melee fighting, because as a Valabard we get access to up to medium armor and all martial weapons. But I just love this as being kind of a general support build, and again, it made sense to go with this over College of Swords. If I was creating a younger character, then maybe College of Swords might have made more sense, but I liked the idea of this guy taking a step back, still being fully combat able, but being more focused on support, and with a little bit of healing here and there. That just felt like the niche that this party was missing, as we already have a powerful magic character, we already have a powerful melee fighter, we already have a powerful ranged fighter. Let's get the support, and I think this works out really, really nicely. The main feat for this build, as again we've had Sharpshooter on the Gunslinger, Great Weapon Master on the Samurai, and Alert on the Thief. This guy comes with the Lucky feat, allowing us to use our limited pool of luck points here, 3 per long rest, to make to give us advantage on attack, to give ourselves or an ally advantage on attack rolls and saving throws, or make an enemy reroll their attack roll. Actually, I think it's just us that can gain the advantage, but we can make enemies reroll their attacks. So similarly to the Thief's Divination ability, we now have ways of helping out our teammates by manipulating rolls made against them. Overall, just making us an absolutely brilliant support character. Between Combat Inspiration and Lucky, you're going to be able to augment your allies' abilities in so many different ways. It just feels so great to play in practice, and you'll see from the combat footage just how well this team works together. I absolutely love it. I've just noticed this is in the corner. You probably didn't see that. There was a weird thing in the corner of my screen. I just got rid of it. Don't you just love how professionally these videos are made? How many times have I made that joke? Alright, let's just keep going. So, let's get on with the equipment here. Starting off with the weapon, we have the Salty Scimitar. Yes, that's actually a weapon in this game. It's obtained in Act 3. It is a scimitar, and I wanted to use a scimitar instead of a rapier here, because I've used a rapier with my previous pirate build, but honestly, scimitars just kind of look more like a pirate's weapon, as well as this one literally being a pirate's weapon. I had to include it in the build. It's a +2 weapon that you pick up in Act 3 that comes with the ability to use command as well. It's light, it's finesse, it gets all that good stuff. It's a pirate weapon, and I wanted to include it here. But of course, if you wanted to go for Giga Power option, the Duelist Prerogative is right there, but just use something else. Don't make yourself totally overpowered. That's not what this build is about. But anyways, we have the Salty Scimitar as our main weapon, no particular ranged weapon as well, since we're just going with Eldritch Blast for that instead, so that you can just see the starting hand crossbow here. But again, this is an Act 3 option, the Salty Scimitar. If you want something to use in Act 1, I think the Adamantine Scimitar is really, really nice. It's a +1 weapon that you get for beating a tricky boss, but it's quite rewarding to grab, as well as it ignores resistance to slashing damage, which can be very, very valuable throughout the game. So I recommend picking that up for Act 1 and then swapping to this in Act 2. Or hell, dual wield them. There's not really anything stopping you there. Go for it, seriously. But anyways, as for our actual equipment, this one seems quite obvious. We have the Birthright Hat, which gives us a +2 to our Charisma, because the way these stats are going to work, as we only get 2 feats, you're going to basically be bumping up your Charisma once, picking up the lucky feat with the other one, and then using the Birthright Hat to get it up to 20, keeping your Dex and your Constitution at the starting levels here. I mean, it's not ideal, but again, since this guy is more of a support character and we mainly just want that high spellcasting stat, it works out perfectly fine anyway. But in the early game, you can use the Diadem of Arcane Synergy. We will be inflicting a lot of conditions with this build, so you can get a bit more damage on your weapon attacks after doing so with Arcane Synergy. Back. Next up for our armor is the Armour of Agility, adding your full dexterity modifier to your armor class and not imposing disadvantage on your stealth checks and giving you a +2 to saving throws, giving us a very decent AC. I am using camp clothing for this build because there wasn't really much pirate equipment that looked good in this game. So yeah, I went with camp clothing in the end to kind of give that kind of older, kind of ramshackled vibe, which I think looks quite nice. But again, this is what the build would look like without it, but this outfit is very, very easy to find. As for an early game armor option though, the Blazer of Benevolence is a bit flashy. Let's go back to the camp clothing. But it will give you a little bit of armor class, but it mainly is that whenever you buff an ally with Bardic Inspiration, you give them you gain 4 temporary hit points. So it's basically just a way to give yourself a little bit of extra juice, but it's just a really easy to get earlier game option that I thought I would recommend because it kind of fits in with the theme of the build, but you mainly want the Armour of Agility when you can get your hands on it. The gloves we're going to be using are the Wondrous Gloves, giving you a flat +1 to your armor class, and if you have a usage but if you can use Bardic Inspiration, you gain 1 more use of it, giving us 6 Bardic Inspiration, which is insane. Absolutely love it. And finally, we have the Acrobat Shoes, giving us advantage on dexterity saving throw checks. This guy may be old, but he still has a bit of a pep in his step. Since we have a such high armor class already, having advantage on dexterity saving throws is going to protect us from those nasty big damage spells like Fireball, making us only take half damage. So having advantage on those dex saves felt quite nice to grab. As well as getting the Amulet of Misty Step, giving us a usage of Misty Step once per short rest. We're not as good as using Misty Step as someone like the Gunslinger or the Thief, but if we need to get into position to be able to support our allies without being in too much danger, similar to the Thief, then we can do that, just not as much. Next up, we also have the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel, pretty much a staple on any Bard or Goo Warlock build, giving you the ability to, after you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can cast illusion or enchantment spells as a bonus action. Things like Vicious Mockery, Dissonant Whispers, Hold Person, Hold Monster, all of those things will work with your bonus action once you cast this spell. Once you make a weapon attack, my apologies. And finally, the Shadow Cloaked Ring, since we have the ability to exist in lightly or heavily obscured areas quite easily with things like Fog Cloud and Darkness from our teammates, we can get a little bit of a damage buff overall. Also, this just pretty much is always online in indoor areas because of the shade, so, you know, you'll get a lot out of this. More than you would think. So yeah, that is the builds. And he's turned. No, go back. There we go. That is the Fortunate Four, that one of the greatest kind of adventuring parties, heist groups, whatever you want to call it, in all of Faerun, each united under a similar theme of magic power suddenly thrust upon them, coming from all walks of life and all walks of history. I love this. The fact that these guys in our own reality can line up historically accurately in a weird way just feels so fun, and being able to unite these concepts under a single banner with such an emphasis on clever teamwork through the various strategies I've employed and the various abilities that we've got. Again, you're seeing the combat footage now, and you can just see how these builds work well together. Now, this encounter didn't go perfect. Unfortunately, the Samurai did not really get to show off all of his abilities here, as unfortunately, thanks to the maimed feature making us immobile, he wasn't able to get off his big melee damage attacks, but he was still able to be really effective with his range stuff, using things like Goading Strike and the like to take on a bunch of hits that would have been otherwise labelled at others. Combat Inspiration came in clutch in a few situations. The Gunslinger was just able to output massive amounts of damage, taking out lots of enemies, and the Thief didn't get hit once, immediately being able to get out of the main thick of combat. Oh god, what's it called? The illusory duplicate one that gives you more AC, that one. Mirror Image. Why did I forget? To immediately make himself really hard to hit, and just got the hell out of there, and then immediately was able to cast things like Darkness and Slow to give the rest of the party an edge. Slow especially came in really handy. Like, I didn't really go into like the mage hand leisure domain strategy here because I didn't feel like gathering all the materials for it. But again, if you've got grenades, you could have been up on that rooftop just having that hand lob those grenades down over and over again on its turn. Like, you could just do so much with each of these different builds. The flavoring, the backstory, the mechanical thing. Like, this is a powerful team. Like, the synergy of how these builds work together with the ability to change the outcomes of rolls with Portent and Lucky, being able to deal massive damage with Sharpshooter and Great Weapon Master, being able to control the battlefield with the control spells, and being able to support with healing and combat inspiration. Like, it's brilliant. I love how this came together. I'm tooting my own horn here. And again, this isn't even my own original concept. I just turned it into something from that post. But yeah, thank you to the guys in the community who were kind of discussing this and like suggesting how this could be done, because this is friggin' awesome. I love these builds and how they come together. Again, if I feel like I may have missed some things, basically all you need to know here is the general leveling scheme for all of them is the Thief. Start with Rogue, go to level 4, do the rest Wizard. Samurai, start with Fighter, go to... and then maybe once you feel comfortable, pick up those levels of Barbarian. It's going to be a bit tricky to figure out exactly when you want to get what, so play around with that. The Gunslinger, just 12 levels of Ranger, nothing crazy there. And the Pirates, I would maybe get to level 3 of Bard, maybe then pick up those 2 Warlock levels, and then go the rest of the way Bard. That's kind of how I would imagine that leveling scheme going. And yeah, you will see how the strategies work with this team. No, as long as you know when to use the right, like, different effects at different times, you'll feel so good playing this. The gang looks great, the theming is great. The reason I kind of decided to make them all humans is because I really wanted to capture those like older films of like a Worlds Collide theme, like things like Shanghai Noon, where you get the cowboy and the, you know, the Chinese kind of man like kind of come together and stuff like that. No, Shanghai? Yeah, Shanghai. That is Chinese. I'm sorry. But you know what I mean, like, or like the like just kind of that Worlds Collide type of thing where all these people come together and it's like they're all similar but different. Like, and don't get me wrong, if you want to play other races with this build, you can. I could see like the Samurai being an Orc for that kind of buff to the critical hits. I could see the Gentleman Thief being a Drow. I could see the Gunslinger being a Wood Elf, like something like that. I could see the Pirate being, is there like, there's not really a good seafaring race in this game, is there? But like a Tiefling could also work because they're like charisma based. Like stuff like that, right? You could really play around with this concept, but just the idea of like kind of capturing those old like movie that kind of like movie vibe, like Ocean's 11 almost. I loved the idea, so that's why I made them all humans. But otherwise, you can kind of do whatever you like with this build. The racial choice doesn't really affect anything overall. But I don't know. I'm proud of this one. I'm happy with it. So yeah, I don't think there's anything else I really want to discuss. So thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.